I never imagined retirement would bring me face to face with the kind of evil I thought I'd left behind. Before you hear what happened to my family, let me tell you who I am. My name is David Miller. For 2 decades, I serve as a county sheriff. I wore the badge with honor, buried friends who wore the same uniform, and learned how fragile peace really is. When I retired, I believed my hardest days were over. I was wrong. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon in May when my life split into before and after. My wife, Sarah, and I had brought our newborn daughter, Emma, home just 3 days earlier. She was impossibly small, with tiny fingers that wrapped around yours like they were afraid to let go. Sarah had gone through a rough C-section, but every time she held Emma, pain disappeared from her face. Love replaced it. We lived in a neighborhood called Maplewood Heights, quiet streets, trimmed lawns, and the illusion of safety. That illusion had a name. Kara Hutchkins, the HOA president. Karen wasn't just strict, she was obsessive. Every rule was a weapon. Every clipboard note felt personal. Mailbox alignment, flower colors, driveway inches, nothing was ever right. For months, we paid fines, adjusted, apologized. It was never enough. That afternoon, Sarah decided to take Emma outside for her first walk. The doctor recommended fresh air. I watched from my home office as Sarah slowly pushed the stroller down our driveway, speaking softly to our daughter. Then Karen's black SUV came speeding down the street. Too fast. It screeched to a stop in front of our house. My stomach dropped. Karen jumped out, clipboard already in hand, her face twisted with rage. I couldn't hear her at first, but I saw Sarah's smile vanish. Confusion turned into fear. I stood up. Karen pointed at the stroller, shouting. Sarah raised a trembling hand, trying to calm her. I opened the door just as Karen screamed. Your stroller's blocking the sidewalk. This is a violation. It's not blocking anything, Sarah said, her voice shaking. Please, you're scaring my baby. Emma began to cry. I don't care about your baby. Karen snapped. Rules are rules. That was when I ran. Years of law enforcement taught me how to recognize danger. Karen wasn't just angry. She was unhinged. Ma'am, step back, I commanded. You're too close. Karen spun toward me. Oh, look, the retired sheriff thinks he's special. She just had surgery, I said, moving closer. There's no violation here. Karen screamed, waving her clipboard. That stroller is 3 inches over HOA boundaries. And she grabbed the stroller. Sarah screamed as Karen yanked it. Weak from surgery, my wife stumbled and fell to her knees, shielding Emma with her body. Let go, I shouted. Karen reached into her purse. Time slowed. I saw the gun. A small silver handgun, shaking in her grip. Put it down, I said calmly, raising my hands. You don't want to do this. I'll show you what happens when people disrespect me, she shrieked. Sarah sobbed. Please don't hurt my baby. I tried to step between them. Look at me, Karen. I'm the problem. Leave him alone. For a moment, the gun pointed at my chest. Then Emma cried again. Karen's face twisted with pure hatred. Shut that baby up. She turned the gun back toward the stroller. Idove. Too late. The gun fired. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sound shattered the neighborhood. I slammed Karen to the ground as the gun skidded away. I didn't look at her again. I ran to my family. Blood. Sarah was shaking. David, she shot Emma. I looked down. My 3-day-old daughter was bleeding from her tiny arm, and my world ended. The sirens reached us before I even felt my knees hit the ground. I was pressing my torn shirt against Emma's tiny arm, my hands slick with blood, my heart beating so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. She was crying. Thank God she was crying. That sound was the only thing keeping me anchored to reality. Sarah was shaking violently beside me, one hand clutching Emma's fingers, the other gripping my arm like she might fall apart if she let go. Stay with us, baby, I kept whispering. Daddy's here. You're safe. You're safe. I didn't know if it was true yet, but I needed her to believe it. Neighbors poured out of their homes. Someone screamed. Someone else started praying. A man I barely knew stood frozen in the middle of the road, staring at Karen like she wasn't human. Karen was still on the ground where I'd slammed her, laughing. Laughing. She broke the rules, she sang in a childlike voice. Had to enforce the rules. I wanted to go back to her. I wanted to end the sound coming out of her mouth forever. Every instinct I had as a father screamed for violence. But Emma needed me. The ambulance screeched to a stop. Paramedics jumped out, efficient and fast. One look at Emma, and their faces hardened. 3-day-old infant, one of them said. Gunshot wound. Hearing those words almost broke me. They worked with terrifying precision, stabilizing Emma, starting in 4 that looked impossibly large for her tiny body. Sarah kept apologizing over and over, like this was somehow her fault. "Ma'am, stop," the paramedic said gently. "You did nothing wrong. You protected her." They loaded Sarah and Emma into the ambulance. I climbed in beside them, my hands never leaving my daughter. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Karen being handcuffed. She was screaming now, not fear but outrage. "I'm the victim. They attacked me." I knew that scream. I'd heard it from criminals for 20 years. At the hospital, Emma was rushed straight into surgery. A doctor stopped me long enough to explain what they were dealing with. "The bullet fractured her shoulder bone," he said. "She's very lucky." Millimeters made the difference. Millimeters. 3 hours passed in a blur of pacing, praying, and reliving every second of that afternoon. Sarah lay in a hospital bed, her surgical stitches reopened, fresh bandages covering her pain. "I should have stayed inside," she whispered. "I should have listened to you." "No," I said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Karen did this. Only Karen." My phone rang nonstop. Old deputies, officers I trained, detectives I trusted. Finally, Tom Jackson called. "David, she's claiming self-defense," he said quietly. I closed my eyes. "Witnesses?" I asked. 5, all saying the same thing. She attacked first. She pulled the gun. She fired. That should have been enough. But I knew better. When Emma came out of surgery alive, Sarah collapsed into sobs so deep they shook her entire body. I held them both, promising something I hadn't said out loud yet. Karen would never hurt my family again. The news exploded. Cameras camped outside the hospital. The headline ran everywhere. HOA president shoots newborn over sidewalk violation. The HOA fired Karen within hours. Neighbors came forward with horror stories, threats, fines, intimidation. Elderly residents cried on camera, saying they'd lived in fear. But Karen's lawyers moved faster. Mental breakdown, temporary insanity, stress-induced psychosis. I watched the system I once trusted start bending. So I stopped waiting. I started investigating. What I uncovered wasn't a breakdown. It was a pattern. Karen had done this before. Not shootings, but abuse. Lawsuits buried by money. Assault charges quietly dropped. Entire neighborhoods relieved when she left. I handed everything to the district attorney. She looked me in the eye. "This helps," she said, "but I need you prepared. The maximum isn't guaranteed. 15 years. That's what justice looked like now." The night before trial, I sat alone in Emma's nursery. She slept peacefully, unaware of the battle being fought over her future. Her arm was healing, but the scar was already visible. A reminder. Sarah stood in the doorway, thinner than before, her eyes hollow. "I keep seeing it," she whispered. "Every time I close my eyes." I pulled her into my arms. "She can't hurt us again," I said. "She will get out someday," Sarah replied. "Won't she?" I didn't answer. The trial began 6 months after the shooting. Sarah testified first. She shook as she described Karen grabbing the stroller, the fall, the gun. When Karen's lawyer tried to suggest she was blocking the sidewalk, the courtroom gasped. I saw Sarah flinch. I wanted to stand up and scream. When it was my turn, I told the truth, calmly, clearly, without rage. They tried to paint me as the aggressor, a trained sheriff, a physical threat, but evidence doesn't lie. Security footage, witnesses, Karen's own past. The jury watched her carefully as the days passed. They saw the coldness, the lack of remorse. Deliberation took 2 days. Those were the longest 2 days of my life. When the verdict came back, the courtroom was silent. Guilty on all counts. Sarah collapsed into my arms. Karen screamed. The judge sentenced her to 25 years. As she was led away, she finally looked small. I didn't feel relief. I felt resolve. Emma will grow up knowing this story. Not to frighten her, but to teach her that evil exists and that it can be stopped. I spent 20 years enforcing the law. This time, the law protected my family. And I will never forget the sound of that gun, or the promise I made that day.
The story's over, now let's get real. Imagine standing there on all that land, every inch legally yours. If you were in the owner's shoes, what would you do? Let them stay, sell the homes, or pull some other wild move? Drop your answer in the comments and let's see who's the boldest.